Who are here on time. We will probably see more people joining as we go along, but I would like to get started. As agreed, I'm going to get started in Dutch with a couple of household announcements, and then we will do some introductions, and then we'll get over to the content of the webinar. Dus welkom iedereen bij dit webinar met Rebecca Bailey en Linda Kohanov over de Connection Focused Therapy methode. Die zij hebben ontwikkeld voor therapeutische interventies met paarden bij PTSS en andere psychische klachten. Mijn naam is Jocelyn Janssens. Ik ben Advanced Epona Quest instructeur en ik leid de Nederlandse opleiding tot coach met paarden volgens de methode, ontwikkeld door Linda Kohanov. Ik ben ook onder andere Master Herder instructeur in de methode van haar en Connection Focused Therapy begeleider. Ik ben de eindredacteur van het boek In Verbinding met Paarden, het polyvagaalprincipe voor effectieve therapie. Dat geschreven is door Rebecca Bailey. En van meerdere van Linda Kohanov's boeken. En ik ben ook, en dat wou ik er graag even bij vertellen, ik ben zelf ervaringsdeskundige in het herstellen van complexe posttraumatische PTSS. Dankzij paarden of met behulp van paarden. En in de tijd dat dat gebeurde, was er nog niet echt gestructureerde hulp op die manier verkrijgbaar. Dus heb ik daar ook zelf het wiel heel erg in moeten uitvinden. En dat is voor mij een van de belangrijke drijfveren om dit mooie en zeer effectieve werk zoveel mogelijk op de kaart te willen zetten in Nederland en Europa. We gaan even de collega's introduceren die meegeholpen hebben aan de vertaling en die meewerken aan de Connection Focused Therapy trainingen in Europa. En voordat we dat gaan doen, wil ik even een paar huishoudelijke mededelingen doen over hoe je vragen kunt stellen. Bijvoorbeeld, dit hele webinar wordt dus opgenomen. De opname loopt op dit moment. En de opname wordt op zijn vroegst ongeveer 1,5 uur na de afloop beschikbaar. Maar ik ben ook verteld door de mensen van Zoom dat het ook langer kan duren als de servers waarop een en ander gebeurt heel erg overbelast zijn op dat moment. Dan kan het ook langer duren. Dus zodra de webinar online beschikbaar wordt, stuur ik de link meteen door aan alle mensen die zich hebben ingeschreven. Het is mogelijk om tijdens dit webinar live vragen te stellen aan Linda Kohanov en Rebecca Bailey. Dit kun je doen door ze in de chat te zetten. Mijn collega Babs Jasper, die zichzelf ook zo even zal voorstellen, die zal de chat monitoren en die zorgt dat ik de vragen voor me krijg, goed zichtbaar krijg. En dan zal ik de vragen voorleggen aan Linda en Rebecca. Dus als je vragen hebt, stel ze gerust in de chat. En ik zie in de chat dat sommige mensen problemen hebben met geluid, maar dat dat dus niet bij iedereen het geval is. En ik ben bang dat dat niet iets is waar wij een heleboel aan kunnen doen, helaas. Dus ik hoop dat je, als je wat problemen hebt met het geluid, dat je een plekje kunt vinden waar dat beter is met je computer. Vragen kunnen gesteld worden via de chat. Dat kan je de hele webinar door doen. We gaan ongeveer tot 8:30 door. En dan hopen we zoveel mogelijk vragen beantwoord te hebben. Praktische vragen over trainingen en wanneer ze gegeven worden. En alle praktische details en waar en hoeveel. Die zullen we in een mailtje achteraf beantwoorden, want we vinden het leuk. We zouden het mooi vinden om zoveel mogelijk van deze kostbare tijd met Linda en Rebecca aan inhoudelijke vragen te besteden over hun kennisgebied, om zoveel mogelijk van hun kennis te kunnen delen in deze tijd. De vragen kun je in het Engels of in het Nederlands stellen, dat maakt niet uit. Wij zullen ze vertalen voor Linda en Rebecca, dus dat komt goed. En daarmee ga ik eventjes over naar Babs Jasper. En dan wil ik Babs even uitnodigen om zichzelf voor te stellen.
Ja, hallo, dankjewel Joselien. Nou ja, ik ben Babs. Ik werk met mensen via de ervaringsgericht leren met paarden methode, ontwikkeld door Linda. Ik ben Iponocast instructor, master hurdle instructor en ook CFT begeleider. Het is echt fantastisch mooi werk om dat allemaal zo te combineren. Ik help Joselien ook bij de opleiding, dus ik ben een co-facilitator in de opleiding en jullie zullen mij ook allemaal gaan zien bij de kennismakingssessie, of nou ja, allemaal. We hebben 28 man in totaal plek, misschien nog wat meer, hè, Joselien, als er veel interesse is, maar dan gaan jullie mij ook live leren kennen. Kijk ik enorm naar uit en bij de CFT-training dadelijk in oktober. Nou, dankjewel.
Dankjewel, Babs. En dan ga ik even over naar René Roelands. René is Babs heeft, dat vergat ze te zeggen, maar Babs heeft geholpen ook bij de vertaling van Rebecca's boek. En René is ook inhoudelijk expert op het vlak en heeft daar ook bij geholpen. René.
Ja, ik had een heel mooi verhaaltje in het Engels voorbereid, dus ik ga het even in het Engels doen. Nou, dat is ook wel leuk, want dan kunnen Cecile en Linda en Rebecca daar ook in mee luisteren, denk ik.
Doe maar.
My name is René Roelands. I participated in the program of Linda Kohanov several years ago as a student. And recently I participated in the connection focus therapy program combined with the polyvagal program, which I enjoyed a lot. In my usual life, I work as a psychologist, have my own practice, and I combine several methods, several interventions to help people, help my clients. And I'm very, very fortunate to do that with my herd of 6 horses, which I work together with. For the book, I just helped in the translation. And as Jocelyn mentioned, I was tuned in as a kind of psychologist, knowledge person. So that was my job in the translation of the book. So I'm very nice to see, I'm very fortunate to see you again, and I won't take any of your time.
Thank you, Renee. Okay, thank you very much. Okay, no, sorry. All right, so, and now I would like to introduce my French colleagues who also teach the Eponaquest curriculum in France and who are also involved in connection-focused therapy and translating Rebecca's book into French. Who would like to go first, ladies?
If you introduce this way, I suppose I have to talk first.
Okay.
Because Anne is not teaching the Eponaquest instructor curriculum. Yeah. So, and she's helping me for reading the translation, but she's not translating. So I have to talk first. So I'm Cécile Gilbert-Cawano. I'm Eponaquest instructor, advanced one, and involved in the curriculum for training the next French and French speakers Eponaquest instructors in France. And I'm a therapist, and I'm working with the trauma survivors with a somatic experiencing approach. So for the one who knows Peter Levin work, that includes Dr. Stephen Porges' work with the polyvagal theory. And that's the reason why I'm translating Rebecca's book with in French, because I'm really knowing what is all the link between the work with Eponaquest and the horses and the work with trauma survivor with polyvagal theory. And I'm so happy we can have that coming in Europe. And so I'm involved in the structure that is preparing the CFT courses in curriculum in Europe. So with Joss and Anne, we're structuring that, and with the help, of course, of Rebecca and Linda, to ensure that in Europe you would have the curriculum for CFT masterclass at the end. That would allow you to welcome your own clients and patients with all that wonderful work.
Okay, thank you, Cecile. Anne.
Hello, everybody. Well, horses and me is a long story over, I think, 50 years. Yes, I am a bit old now. So when 12 years ago, when I met Linda Kohanov, it was like kind of evidence. So I became an Equestrian instructor, and I had the opportunity to accompany women and their children who are victims of violence, domestic violence. So I do continue to work with that kind of person, but not only. So this led me to I wanted to better understand how our nervous system is working. And so I became also a somatic experiencing as Cecile. And this is really great to mix the two approaches, which are very powerful. So I want to develop training for professionals to better understand this nervous system, how it works, and the way horses can help. So here I am. I'm also an emotional trainer and, of course, focus therapy, a connection focused therapy trainer. And I am so glad to work with you, Linda, Rebecca, Joss, and Cecile. Love you.
Thank you, Anne. And that's mutual, of course. Thank you very much. So I'm going to mute you guys and unpin you. Babs?
I will unpin everyone.
You will unpin everyone. Thank you very much. Okay. So because we have a lot of participants, we have chosen for just me on one side and Linda and Rebecca on the other side to be in the main picture for everyone to see. And that way we hope that it's clear enough for everybody. In your Zoom settings, you can choose speaker view, and then you will see the screen of the person speaking large in screen and all the other ones very small. So I just want to give that as a tip to all the participants. So the rest of the webinar will be in English. I would like to encourage you, if you have a problem with one of the terms, that if somebody uses a term that you don't understand, please just put it in the chat, and Babs will make sure I get to see it, and we will quickly clarify it in Dutch. But we're not going to translate the whole webinar. And with that, I'm going to invite Linda and Rebecca to introduce themselves, and yeah, so I hope we have already some questions that came in beforehand, which I will ask you, but we would like to just start with, well, where did your journey with writing books about horses and humans healing start?
Okay.
Yeah.
So for me, this is Dr. Bailey. I have been a psychologist since the early 90s. My journey with horses started from very, very, very young. Some of you who've read my book have heard about my beautiful mare Locket, who was really, I call her my super co-regulator. Later, many years when I learned about Stephen Porges's work, I began to understand what it was that this incredible mare did. And to this day, 50 years later, my heart opens when I think of her. So I will go forward to, in the late 80s, I got into animal-assisted therapy, and originally was looking at bringing animals into a state hospital, which, believe it or not, at the time was very unusual. In my journey to my PhD, I did a master's thesis and was told that it was on women that own horses. And I was told not to tell anybody that it would discredit the field. And so I felt very much in the closet with my work with horses, until the end of the 90s, and I began to feel like I could talk about it. Just the last thing I'll say is that I really learned when I was in graduate school that everything I learned about working with people I had learned from horses. And one of the lines that you'll hear in connection-focused therapy is ride the horse you're with, or be with the horse you're with. And so when I would get up very early as an assistant trainer, to work with horses, I would learn how to look at them and celebrate the beauty for who they were in front of me, instead of trying to put them in a box and make them a certain way. And I attribute that understanding to my beautiful friend, Margie McDonald, who is part of Polyvagal Equine Institute. So I say to this day, all these years later, when I work with people, the core of connection-focused therapy is celebrating the person in front of you. And then when I wrote the book, it was during COVID, I found myself needing to ground myself in what would help my heart feel better. And so Lockett introduces the book, and we go forward from there. That was a long-winded, I'm sorry, but
No, that was good.
I'll pass it to you.
Okay. Well, I'm Linda Kohanov, and I've written 5 books on how horses can help people become better humans. And I've been lucky enough that they've been translated into multiple languages, including Dutch and French and German, even the Czech language, actually. So it's been a grand adventure to be able to work with horses to teach leadership skills, parenting, relationship skills, expand creativity, and also then with mental health professionals like Dr. Bailey, also work more deeply with people who have experienced trauma in their lives and would like to learn how to move from surviving to really thriving in life.
I think what Linda and I have found with connection-focused therapy is we've found an area to bridge where, as a psychologist and a horse enthusiast, the psychology field, at least in America, initially didn't understand this horse thing. And the horse thing, people understood the psychology, but the communication to outside of our groups is what I think we've been able to achieve. So it's very exciting. Prior to writing this book, I've had a few peer-reviewed papers done on polyvagal in the courtroom, polyvagal for judges, polyvagal in different venues. And so now to be able to be coming in and saying, and you need to understand how the horses can help you understand your own autonomic nervous system, is so exciting. And thanks to you, incredible women who've helped us bridge the gap with the language as well. It's just, I could not be more excited where we are right now with this field.
Yeah, I share that completely. I think we're on the cusp of a really important breakthrough moment for introducing, well, animal-assisted therapy in general, but especially the incredibly beneficial work with horses. I think it's gaining credibility at a really astounding pace. And there are some really exciting pieces of research going on in the Netherlands, amongst others, which I shared with you, which is really documenting the beneficial effect on veterans with PTSD. And you know, so it's a really exciting time for everybody who has been, you know, doggedly pioneering this work, completely believing in it, as we all have. And I think that we're really on the verge of a serious breakthrough that we're going to be taken much more seriously also by the healthcare sector at large. Mm-hmm. And that's, of course, like a wonderful development. So since a lot of our, sorry, Linda?
I was just going to say, one of the things that's so great about Stephen Porges's work coming up with the polyvagal theory is that it also really gives us a vocabulary to talk about why work with animals and horses in particular is so effective. And also the polyvagal theory gives us an understanding much deeper understanding of how to create a series of equine facilitated activities that will work at an optimal level to help retrain someone's nervous system. And then finally, the polyvagal theory helps us to understand how to more effectively train horses and help rehabilitate horses who themselves have experienced trauma.
And more kindly to work with horses. And what's also exciting is we're educating people like, it sounds very pretentious, like Dr. Porges, about the unique healing of horses. So animal assisted therapy for sure, but horses bring a whole nother piece in that it's the space between human and horse that we like to say where the healing is. So I totally agree with Linda. And that's one of the things that connected us initially is we had premises, we shared premises, she with the horses, me with the humans. But we had a vocabulary, but we didn't have a vocabulary that translated tenfold out of our worlds. And then suddenly in communicating with Dr. Porges, with J.C. Dugard around appeasement and what happens to the nervous system and what we call this super regulator piece that kicks into gear that allows people in extreme trauma to survive, we began to understand more and more what this piece was with human horse. And absolutely, Levine's work is in there, Bessel's work is in there, but it's also very different, which I think I tried to bring to my book was the mindful, authentic, purposeful, and individualized work of working with humans and horses, particularly with severe trauma.
Yeah, thank you. Yeah, I think that this may be a good moment to announce to the participants that one of the things I will be sending out to everybody who subscribed to this web event, an article that you wrote together with Dr. Stephen Porges and with J.C. Dugard, who is the survivor of that serious kidnapping case that you have become well known for helping to reintegrate. And this is an article where you talk about this incredible survival mechanism and how we should be viewing it in professional therapy settings, how we should understand people who have had that work for them, and how we should communicate with them and help them reintegrate back into normal human life. Yeah,
what you're saying, it's so wonderful to talk with people in different languages, because languaging is the most important thing, one of the most important things that is overlooked in the field. So without getting into a long dialogue, fawning is a very offensive statement for many women and men who, you don't usually use fawning for men, but there's many women who are very offended by the emerging use of the word fawning or Stockholm syndrome. So as we communicate across the ocean with each other, we are very conscious of, wait, what does that word mean in your world? What does it mean to me? And understanding how important in working with survivors, in understanding what that word means for them. And that's part of what it is, because words impact the nervous system. So with horses, the meaning of the word may not, but the intonation, the way we say the word may impact the horse in front of us. But to us, what we mean, we need to understand what that word means. And we do, there's a chapter, not to keep saying that, in the book on the importance of languaging. And that's something that I think is, just even the word fawning to a judge to believe that the client, or to jury to use the word fawning to a woman who's been raped, the jury may look at that and say, oh, well, you knew what was going on. You were fawning. That's so confusing for the perpetrator. So this goes out of the realm of horse-human connection. It goes into how we create a more kind, compassionate universe.
Yeah. I think that I'm going to translate the word fawning Yeah, so it's what is meant with the term fawning is een soort van flatterende onderdanigheid. Dus als je slachtoffer bent van een geweldpleger of iemand die misbruik van je maakt, dat je een vorm van onderdanigheid en flatteren gaat hanteren om te overleven. En Rebecca zegt, ik wil niet dat het zo genoemd wordt. Ik wil dat het proberen kalm te houden van de geweldpleger genoemd wordt. Dus ze zoekt een term die niet denigrerend is voor het slachtoffer. En dat is waar de paper over gaat, die zij gaat circuleren aan het eind van deze talk. Dus dat mag ik naar jullie sturen van haar. I just told people that this term is that what you just said now is also in this paper that you have allowed me to distribute to all of them.
And it's gaining traction. The only reason I mention it, it's gaining traction. And what we know with horse-human interaction is if we it's a whole nother webinar, but I mention it only because it is gaining traction over here. And some of the bigwigs in the field use it without thinking. And so part of all of this piece is just being conscious of what the word means to the people that we work with. Maybe somebody likes it. Maybe there's a person who says, no, I get it. But we need to understand that because it's about the survivors. It's not about our interpretation.
And it's confusing enough to have been in a situation like that and to come back to what they call normal life and, try. Yeah, so, and this is also, there are many types of trauma that this is applicable to. There are also, of course, many other types of trauma and many other types of psychological complaints that our work is beneficial to and that the connection-focused therapy is beneficial to. And that's why I would like to actually move to a question that Renee had. Renee Roelands, who is one of our translators of the Dutch translation of your book, and that's in the book you mention that you like to work with people with severe trauma, people with severe trauma cases. You like to work with them at least 6 to 8 hours in the first week. And Renee, as a psychotherapist and as somebody who works with people like that, was astounded because she says there's no way we could get funding for that kind of intensive one-on-one work if it's not an inpatient situation. So would you like to elaborate a little bit on your philosophy behind and the way that you do that and why you do it that way?
Yeah, that's a wonderful question. Initially, when I've had people that have had severe attachment ruptures, whether it's because of a trauma or whatever the trauma is, I feel that it is incredibly important to help their nervous system set to a place that they can feel safe enough and connected enough to then maybe do ongoing work. And I can't do it in an hour. How I do it, this is not like Americans are doing it all over the place, but it's one of the reasons we want CFT to really go out and expand is because we want to show that research that you can see an effective piece when you front load the work. How I do it is I have some people that can pay full fee, and then I do a certain amount of people for free in those 6 hours. Now that sounds lovely. I've been in the field 35 years, so I have built a practice where I have some people that come in with the funds that can do it. I don't do it so much now, but a few years ago, I had a church that gave some donations. I have a nonprofit I tack into, but I'm really going to encourage, be creative about that, because to spend a half a day or a full day with someone initially can jumpstart an amazing piece of allowing their nervous system to say, oh, I feel really safe with this human, because it's really hard to build rapport an hour a week. So again, it's not that Americans are doing this everywhere. We're driven by evidence-based insurance company criteria, but you have to sometimes be very creative and say, okay, who can I see for a half-day workshop that the funding can help me so that I can see this person? I do about, I would probably say about 6 or 7 pro bono if I'm really honest, every year, and now a little less, but they are the most satisfying. They really are, you know,
Yeah.
and this notion, people always say, oh, you have to pay to get something out of the work. That has not been my experience. Some of the more severely traumatized who really are buying into the work are the most rewarding, because they really believe that somebody sees them and cares enough to take them on, if that makes sense. And so it makes it easy when they say, you just see me for the money, and you say, yeah, the zero. So.
So I just want to say, since we have like this wonderful opportunity with a large group of Dutch professionals who are really interested in the psychotherapy field with horses, I think that together we can also make a bit of a push for our insurance systems to take this work more seriously. And I think that we need this herd of colleagues to do that together. And I want to definitely be in Holland, be a force changing that for the better, and to make sure that trauma therapy with horses is going to be taken very seriously by the funders and by the insurance system, and by the insurance system to become more proactive about that and more focused on prevention and healing rather than on curing just symptoms. So, and I'm seeing on the chat that there's, we get some people reacting saying that yes, absolutely, 1 hour is definitely not enough. So yeah, thank you. I think we need to make that point all together, and I think that it's a great opportunity to stress that. So I would like to ask another question that Renee asked to you both. And also, this is a wonderful opportunity to also bring Linda's unique experience and expertise to the foreground a little bit. But we have already on the chat some people asking about working with traumatized horses and whether that's a good idea. How do you go about it? What are your tips, and how do you go about working with horses that have issues?
The polyvagal theory emphasizes that all mammals, so that's cats and dogs and lions and tigers and bears and horses and zebras, all mammals have this polyvagal nervous system. That one of the innovations, as opposed to lizards, for instance, is that mammals actually use their nervous systems to co-regulate each other. And so we're not supposed to be loners. We're not supposed to be alone in this. And Stephen Porges is very clear that it's through connection, trustworthy connections, that a certain aspect of the mammal's nervous system is activated that supports healing and restoration and growth. So to a certain extent, it's so important for people who've been traumatized by highly predatory, aggressive humans to realize that making connections with other humans at first can be very difficult. But because mammals have the polyvagal nervous system that can co-regulate others, in other words, help others to feel more peaceful and safe and engaged in life, that so if you can't trust humans, mammals can step forward. This is an important piece for animal-assisted therapy. Mammals can step forward and do for us what many humans in our lives cannot. And so animal-assisted therapy is often the bridge for a person's nervous system who's been heavily traumatized by humans to begin to heal, to literally begin to heal through this safety, through connection. And horses are not predators. And so this brings a whole new way of being strong and connected in the world. Horses are not predators. They can be preyed upon in nature, but they are not quivering, gutless victims. They actually will perform altruistic acts to save other herd members. And when people are in the presence of a horse, there's a feeling of a trustworthiness precisely because the horse is strong and social, but not a predator. And so that's one of the places where you reached out to me, Rebecca, is that when I wrote my book, The Power of the Herd, a non-predatory approach to social intelligence, leadership, and innovation, you reached out to me because J.C. Dugard, who had been kidnapped for 18 years, had gone through a lot of wonderful therapy with Dr. Bailey, and then she was stepping forward into becoming a leader herself, becoming a parent. She speaks to large organizations, so then to become empowered in a way that you can use the horse as an example of being powerful and engaged and protected without being a predator is huge. Because if people are only seeing power in a predatory fashion, it's very hard for them to step into being empowered in their lives. So horses allow that to happen.
It's her word was you have to think like a predator, but act like
JC.
Yeah, JC's. You have to think like predator but act like prey. But I wanted to say something also about the traumatized horses. Linda and I are very, very clear that you have to early on, particularly when you're working with trauma, and sometimes you don't know that you have somebody who's been traumatized. They may be there for a skill-based class and you suddenly hear something and that you realize that you're dealing with somebody that's had extreme trauma. We're very clear with the horses that the horse's well-being is as important as the human well-being, as important as the therapist or the coach's well-being. We call it the three-legged stool. That's in literature anyways, in therapy, but it's a collaboration. And so a traumatized horse could even be, so you're talking about one that comes in severely traumatized, but you could also have a horse that gets burnt out in this work. And you have to know your rhythm well enough with your horse to talk to your partner that you're working with, because I really believe in partnership in this work. You know what? We're not going to use Dr. Velcro. You can see it's a tough day. She's not the right horse for this particular person. So when we set up a training, we actually spend quite a bit of time deciding which horses we're using. And sometimes there is such a thing as changing horses midstream. We'll change the use of the horse in the middle of the thing. We'll decide this is not the right horse for this particular person. So you really have to know your horses.
And the other thing, I think the polyvagal terminology is very helpful in understanding when and how you bring a horse into this work. So some of the main vocabulary is that people can get a dysregulated nervous system, and that's when you get really disorganized and your emotions take over and your flight or fight responses or your freeze response kicks in. That's a dysregulated nervous system. Stephen Porges contends that we learn from our parents how to, over time, self-regulate our nervous systems, because in his terminology, the parent co-regulates the child into a regulated state. There are so many people who grew up with parents who are highly dysregulated, so their nervous systems never benefited from having a parent who could co-regulate them and help them feel safe, and over time teach them how to regulate their own nervous system. The same with horses, though. A lot of horses have had training from highly disorganized, dysregulated riders and trainers who move into violence, and that causes trauma. So there are certain horses who have been trained and who have the disposition of being naturally self-regulated themselves. They can handle themselves, and they also, certain horses are gifted at co-regulating a dysregulated human. So what we do in the beginning is we make sure with a new trauma survivor entering this work, we make sure we're working with horses who are regulated themselves and who can regulate a dysregulated human. Then we're going to bring in, as the person learns how to self-regulate, and we teach skills for that, how to regulate their nervous system, then over time, we might bring in a little bit more challenging horses so a person can learn how to not just self-regulate, but co-regulate other horses. But we do it in a very concentrated way. So if a abused horse comes to us, we are not going to put them with a dysregulated human. That would be cruel to everybody involved, and it would be very, very dangerous.
We just had a really interesting thing happened last night very quickly at a restaurant. We knew a horse program, and horses are not fragile flowers, all of them, maybe there are some, but we were in a restaurant and someone told us a story about a horse that had broken his neck. And this is a horse at a program that myself and 2 other people knew of and had grave concerns that this horse was doing this work. And I just realized that last night. And when they told us, we were having a fine dinner, the person told us the story, they were passing by and said, oh, this had happened. I was floored because this is a horse that our horse professional and myself had said should never be doing this work. Now, maybe it was a random thing, but the fact that we heard this horse broke his neck because he responded to a sound did not surprise us one bit. And it made me so sad because the horse professional who I bow down to in my life had said to them, this horse should not be doing this. So it's just interesting. So we do need to take this very seriously, the emotional well-being and physical safety for horses too. Sorry.
Yes, and the polyvagal theory, as Linda so beautifully elaborates, really helps us to understand how to do that. And this is why us understanding the polyvagal and the autonomous nervous system better is so important. And there are some questions coming in about the connection focused therapy and how does that link into all of this. And so I see one question from Chantal Kaptein, who asks, can you give an example of how a session could be structured according to the polyvagal theory with horses? So what would this mean in practice?
Well, I'm going to say something again, a plug. I'd love you to read the book because there's a lot of examples
There's a lot of examples in there. Yeah.
But let's say you're one of the first, and certainly the intro training and our trainings, you can see more of this, but one of the really first ones is the connection human to human. You know, how you set up your nice to meet you, where would you like to meet, as much as do you want to meet down in the barn today, or we can go in the office. So what I'm trying to say is from the very moment you connect in the session, you're saying, I'm curious about you, I compassion, I want to connect, I want to understand your nervous system a little, I want you to understand mine. Now you bring in the horses, that may be going down to the barn, sitting and watching the horses the first day, that's it. Whatever that piece is, we need to remember that not everybody is comfortable with horses. Some people they're intrigued, but not so comfortable. And in the book, I talk of one woman that took forever to get near horses. For whatever reason, she was more comfortable with a donkey than she was with a horse, didn't see it, and then realized they were the same, which was such an interesting piece. But it's the first step is connection. And those of you that also know my dear friend Deb Dana's work talks a lot about the beginning stages of proximity. Where do you want me to stand? Where do we sit? Just giving that invitation for conscious connection.
I can give you some examples of a sequence of activities that would be pretty typical. I mean, you do have to slow it down. And so, yeah, sometimes with the person, the best thing for them to do is just to sit outside and watch horses. But one of the things that I've been doing is I've been a part of studies with Dr. Ann Baldwin from the University of Arizona. And we studied a variety of different horse activities to see what is the effect on the horse's nervous system and the human's nervous system. And from that, I realized that, well, we saw that people's nervous systems, especially if they didn't previously have experience with horses, a person's nervous system could benefit the most initially from working with a horse who is restrained. So working with a loose horse, going in with a loose horse to a person who has not been with horses, we saw that the nervous system was too dysregulated in the beginning. It was hard for the person's nervous system to regulate unless the horse was restrained. And by that, I mean, you have a halter on the horse and you have a horse handler, a very sensitive, supportive, very safe horse handler. They're sort of holding the horse, letting the horse move just a little bit as a person goes up and touches the horse or grooms the horse. And we found that with horses who are restrained in this way, that the nervous system of a person grooming a horse for 10 minutes showed an increase in heart rate variability and a release of oxytocin. But the greatest benefit for the people initially was when the horse was restrained. If they had to move around and negotiate a loose horse, the nervous system got too stimulated. And so that was one of the things that we learned from the research we did. And then we learned also that then you begin to help a person be with more of a loose horse as they're learning what we would call some self-regulation techniques, where they're learning some breathing techniques that regulates the person's nervous system and the horse's nervous system at the same time. That's something for those of you who work in the Eponaquest field, we would call the rock back and sigh. It's a way of approaching a horse, seeing the horse have a proximity response, and relaxing, rocking back and then doing a long out breath. And this actually has been shown through a number of studies, including studies that Dr. Porges has done. A long out breath, an out breath that's longer than the in breath, actually activates the ventral vagus complex, which is the part that will seek and experience safety through connection. And so by teaching this rock back and sigh, then with loose horses, then a person goes from being regulated by a horse who can handle a person, who's also restrained with a horse handler who can help regulate the person. So the person goes from being co-regulated by others to then learning self-regulation techniques, and then over time learning how to work with more adventurous horses so that that person's nervous system is learning how to co-regulate others.
I think that the key to connection-focused therapy, not the connection-focused training. So let's be clear. Initially, this was it was designed really for extreme trauma. And then we started seeing, wow, there's some really good training that can happen to some of you guys that are coaching or teachers that want to use it for training. So can be very specific skill set that I know you all can be teaching at the intro class. And then with the therapy, one of the things Linda said, and Linda and I do this when we present all the time, is you may also have a person who really the idea of restraint freaks them out. In many of the abducted clients I've worked, they can't even deal with the halter. They don't want to see the fly mask on the horse. And so I may spend a few hours outside of the arena with my very traditionally, unless there's a wild turkey, which you guys have read the book if you've heard, Frisia is the most calming animal I've been around when she's just hanging out in her pen. Again, I have no turkeys here, but so you might sit outside that pen for a couple hours in connecting, not straight, but connecting, take a walk, come back and sit. And then maybe that human might want to go in there. So one of the things about connection-focused therapy that we really push is the understanding is you never really know what the other person's nervous system is perceiving. I don't know if Linda feels 100% safe right now, I assume, but maybe the black cat running across the room freaked her out. So it's the same with this type of work. We don't really know, no matter how much evidence and research we have out there. I don't know what's going to really make this other person feel. It's just like with our horses. We can speculate and project all we want. There's a lot of information horses give us that humans don't, because they're so much in touch with their nervous system, but we need to remember that with our clients. So the real core of connection-focused therapy is that you individually respect and are curious about each person's nervous system. The trainings are a little bit different, where there's skill set, rock back and sigh, those pieces that apply, because we're trying to teach other people to be able to teach other people how to do it. I just wanted to make that clear.
Thank you, Rebecca. I just want to quickly summarize, because there was some back and forth on the chat about whether you prefer people to halter the horses or not, and that sort of thing. And I answered that with that you should be looking at on a case-by-case basis, depending on what your client needs, what helps your client to get in touch, to be able to get regulated and to be able to start understand what the work is about.
And it's about connection. And so we need to remember that the horses in our minds are the stars. They really are. But we, us other humans, are as important. I really believe that. And that's a little different than a lot of the other equine orientations.
Yeah.
We are the facilitators are as important.
And this is one very important element of the connection focused therapy, is that in the connection focused therapy training for counselors and people who work with traumatized clients, we teach them the skills to regulate themselves and regulate the client. So to provide this experience of a regulated, safe environment to help them understand how they can do that for themselves eventually. And so this is what I wanted to summarize as well, because there are some questions about the CFT. I would also like to ask a question from one of the participants that came by a little while ago on the chat. Somebody who works with children. Do you have any, I know that you don't specifically work with children. Do you have any ideas on?
I will tell you a great example. Our area was burned.
Can I finish the question? I just want to.
Yes. All right.
So the question was about at what age can you start working with children? Because I know that you do work with families.
Yes.
And yeah.
Okay, sorry to cut you off. I also work with very young children, mostly on a specific issue. So when the wildfires burned this area, there was one little boy who got caught up in a fire in a canyon and spent all night as the fire raged. And with him, and his mom, I did a very purposeful interaction with one of our miniature horses, where we were able to tell him that this miniature went through the same fire and had some issues, had some fear. And so we created a narrative about little Mister. And then this little boy walked and talked with Mister about his experience. So what I'm trying to say is you can be very creative. The youngest kid I've ever worked with individually was 3.5. And it was just around helping his dad and him understand frustration. And it was the same little miniature. He was trying to walk up and brush while we were holding him and have it stand still. And he was like, I can't, he's not listening. And then he was able to kind of laugh. So I think if you have the gift of working with children, don't be afraid of it. It's a little bit more direct, however. Like, again, the story of Mr. and true story. This little boy slept the night after the session with Mister. I never saw him again. I saw the mom a few times, but he stopped having nightmares. And it's, there's lots of other theories out there that could talk about narrative therapy and why this was helpful that he told the story. But all I know is that it was a 75-minute session with little Mister, stopped the nightmares. So I encourage you, if you know children, absolutely work with children, with the horses, and work with families. Use your skill set to bring into the horses.
It is nice to have mini horses.
It is.
If you're working with children, that's for sure.
It is. And even with some adults, actually in miniature horses, we also do police training and judges trainings. And boy, is it fun to use the miniatures. Particularly the police, because they act all like and then they can be a little afraid too, it's interesting. Anything that provokes a nervous system response where it becomes into awareness is what we really want, in a safe, respectful manner for the human, the therapist, and the horse.
Yeah. So there are some really amazing reactions coming on the chat about people who share your experience of working with mini horses and children. And I think that's a wonderful field. And I had a Shetland pony, and he has meant a lot to me and my clients over the years. And he's now living elsewhere because of some other reasons. But but we must not underestimate the power of the small horses, because they are big horses in a small bite size. I would like to, and somebody's saying here also, even big horses will help regulate a little child, and that's absolutely true as well. I'd like to head for the wrap up. I think we've had some amazing experience. You shared some amazing experiences and examples. Linda, I would like to invite you to tell us a little bit about the new edition of Way of the Horse that's coming up, because that incorporates some of your new insights about the autonomous nervous system. And then I will briefly summarize some stuff about the trainings and the fact that you guys are coming here next year and how people can get that information.
Great. Yeah, so in 2007, I released a deck of horse wisdom cards and a book called Way of the Horse with the equine artist Kim McElroy. And the point of Way of the Horse was to find an interactive way to take horse wisdom back to the human world. So, so that somebody who couldn't have horses could interact with the cards, where each card represents a different lesson that horses have to teach humans. Or on a rainy day at the barn, people use them, and there are all kinds of reasons to use them. But I have recently updated the Way of the Horse, and I've added 2 new cards, and both of them do incorporate some of the polyvagal language and wisdom. So it was great to be able to update the cards and also share some research in some of the other essays that we didn't have when I wrote it back in 2007, but to also add 2 new essays that both bring in the polyvagal theory into this more accessible way of engaging with it.
Thank you. Yeah. And so this book has, I still regularly get questions of where people can get this book. It has been sold out for a number of years. The Dutch edition has been sold out for a number of years. The English first edition has been sold out for a number of years. And so basically we're glad to announce there's going to be a new version with some added material that is coming out in, I think, October, right?
Yes, I think it's October 18th. And so that you'll be able to access the English version very quickly, and you can even pre-order it, for instance, on Amazon.com right now and some of the other services. But hopefully we're going to get a French translation, a new updated version, as well as a new updated Dutch version at some point. But you had an offer to people maybe to make that possible.
That's right. And this is some information I will share as well, but we are looking at, we need to get some people to commit to buying a number of books up front, and then the publisher will be able to publish the new edition. And so people who are interested in that can contact me, and I will be posting some stuff on the internet and in the newsletter soon. So I hope that we will be able to translate the new version into Dutch and make that available, because there's still a lot of demand for that book. And I personally work with that book a lot. It's really great. So it really helps also to start a conversation and to break the ice, and to there's so many applications for those cards. So it's a really great tool. So next year, hopefully, Corona gods permitting, Rebecca, you and Linda together will be coming to Europe to near Holland and Belgium and France. We're going to find a location that's accessible for everybody who wants to join your masterclass in the connection focused therapy method. So the people who have subscribed to this web event, we will make sure that you get all that information on how, if you are interested in joining that training, how you can do that. And, you know, we are working at the moment. We don't have dates yet, because it's a lot, as anybody knows who's ever hosted an international training, there's a lot of planning involved. It can be quite complicated and strenuous. We tried to have one this June, and it didn't happen because of the corona bug hitting Rebecca. And so we had some bad luck with it as well. So hopefully next year we will be able to make that available to people who are interested to join a really in-depth training with you that really goes into the depth of that, where we really want to make sure that people who are working with clients and with horses with serious cases, that we can do a really good skill share and have an exchange about new ways of approaching that work and how they can build up sessions like that. And we also will be offering, my French colleagues and my Dutch colleagues and I will be offering some preliminary introductory trainings to be able to join that for people who already want to get started. And those trainings will be really helping you to get the most out of the in-depth training with Rebecca and you. And when we have you here, I hope to also make you do some other things, which we will still talk about. But for now, I really hope that that we have been able to create some interest in the connection-focused therapy work, and that people will read your book, and that people will be incorporating the insights from the book in their work. And if they have questions, they are welcome to come to me and to you, and we will continue to answer as many of your questions in the coming time. We also will do some introductory short events if you want to get a little bit more insight in the kind of exercises that we do with the horses. So that information will all be sent to everybody via the email that is going to follow this event. So with that, I would like to thank you very much. I think it's time to wrap this up. Thanks so much for joining us from California. And I hope it's not too dry there at the moment. Hope there's no fires.
We too. Thank you all so much. It's so fabulous.
All right. So thanks everybody who joined. Thank you so much for your attention. We're really completely pleased with how much attention, how much interest there was in this webinar. So we hope we have been really helpful, that you have enjoyed this. And if you have any more questions, you're always very free to contact me and Babs and my colleagues in France, and Rebecca and Linda, of course. All right. So thank you very much, everyone. Yes, let's unite the world, Ellen. Okay, wonderful. Thank you very much, and have a very nice day and evening, everyone.
Bye-bye.
Bye.